Presenting now are Dr. Albert Authority, Margret David Uyoh, and Kemmy Bossa Blessing. Dr. Albert Authority is a Nigerian musicologist, composer, and educator whose work interrogates the politics of sound, African art music, and decolonial epistemologies in global music theory. With double PhDs in musicology and music theory and composition, he has authored numerous books, articles, and over 1,000 compositions, advancing innovative frameworks such as epistomusical pedagogy and medical musicology. His research and teaching span Africa, Europe, Asia, and North America, where he leads curriculum reform and culturally responsive music education. Authority's scholarship foregrounds indigenous compositional logics and challenges Western paradigmatic hegemony in the analysis and pedagogy of African music globally. Margret David Uyoh is a Nigerian music educator and school administrator with over 12 years of experience across early childhood, primary and secondary education. She holds degrees in music, education, and music education, and is currently pursuing a PhD at Ignatius, Ajuru University of Education. Her research interests include digital technology in music learning, early childhood pedagogy, and the integration of indigenous and contemporary musical practices. She has presented papers at major national and international conferences and serves as the school supervisor at Total Child School, Bori Eleme. Uyoh is a registered teacher and active member of Somen and Anim. Kemmy Bossa Blessing is a postgraduate researcher in music therapy at Obafemi Awolowo University, Ile-Ife, Nigeria. Her work explores the intersections of music therapy, medical musicology, psychology, and Nigerian musical traditions, with a particular focus on music-based interventions for stress management, emotional regulation, and cognitive well-being. She is also engaged in examining contemporary compositional techniques and their therapeutic potential within African musical contexts. Through her research, Kemmy aimed to bridge academic scholarship and clinical practice by advancing culturally grounded approaches to music therapy. She has presented her work at academic forums and remains committed to strengthening music therapy research and practice in Nigeria and beyond. They will be presenting Anatomy of African Art Music and Western Paradigmatic Hegemony.
Distinguished guests, distinguished colleagues, scholars, and practitioners. The central concern of this study is simple but urgent. African art music is routinely misinterpreted because Western paradigms are treated as universal. This presentation unpacks the structural anatomy of African art music and shows how Western frameworks distort its meaning.
Emergence of African music, African art music. African art music emerged in the mid-20th century, driven by composers like Akin Ilba, who sought to blend indigenous musical elements with Western notation. Fusion of musical logics. Composers such as Joshua Uzoigwe and Nketia intentionally fused African musical logics with musical notation, creating a unique sound that reflects African modality. Misinterpretation issues. Applying Western paradigms universally leads to misinterpretation, as African musical logics are often viewed as irregular or exotic, creating an epistemic imbalance in analysis.
The study therefore asks whether African art music possesses its own structural anatomy that deserves independent theoretical recognition. Therefore, it addressed three core questions, which are what constitutes the structural anatomy of African art music? Secondly, how do Western paradigms impose epistemic hegemony on its interpretation? And finally, which African-centered frameworks better capture its music logics? So the next slide. The study aimed to reposition African art music as a coherent epistemic system. Its objectives were to map its structural features, to critique Western paradigmatic dominance, and to propose African-centered analytical pathways. The study draws, next slide. The study draws on Gramsci's cultural hegemony and the colonial theory. Together, they reveal how African art music is structurally coherent but epistemically misinterpreted.
This study utilized a qualitative conceptual analytical design to explore the structural anatomy of African art music, ensuring a comprehensive understanding of its unique characteristics. The study analyzed 35 fully noted works from 1960 to 2025, representing diverse African countries, African composers from Nigeria, Ghana, Kenya, and South Africa, highlighting their contributions. We conducted a detailed structural analysis of rhythm, melody, harmony, and form, revealing the intentional design and coherence within African art music compositions.
Okay. Across all 35 works, we found consistent indigenous logics in rhythm, where the rhythmic meters are always cyclic, melodic organizations where speed tone contouring are used oftenly. Then harmonic language basically is modal layering, formal designs, timbre and textures. These features confirms African art music as a coherent epistemic system.
Western misinterpretation of African art music. Cyclistic misinterpreted. Western analysis often labels African rhythmic cyclicity as irregular, failing to recognize its intentional structure and cultural significance within African musical system. Harmonic fields in African art music are frequently misinterpreted as static or non-functional, overlooking their dynamic rules in creating musical tension and resolution. Event-based form dismissed. Event-based forms are often described as lacking development in Western discourse, ignoring their unique narrative and structural progression inherent in African composition.
Epistemic. Epistemic hegemony. Why does this contain? So, Western paradigmatic dominance is sustained through curricular dominance, whereby universities still prioritize Western theories. And this can be seen also in by Trinity, ABRS, and other likes. Analytical gatekeeping. African frameworks were rarely accepted in mainstream journals. Normalization of Western universality. Western theory is presented as culturally neutral, even though it is culturally specific. This creates a hierarchy where African art music is positioned as irregular.
African-centered analytical model. So, African musical logic. This framework explains cyclicity and communal timing, emphasizing how African rhythm are structured around collective participation and cultural significance rather than Western individualism. Creative ethnomusicology. Focusing on the intercultural composition, this model highlights the integration of diverse musical elements, showcasing African art music, how it fosters innovation through cultural exchange and collaboration. Epistemic pedagogy theory. This theory encodes African musical knowledge structurally, revealing how traditional practices inform contemporary compositions. Third, preserving cultural heritage while promoting model relevance.
We have a diagram that's also displayed to show the conceptual framework. But I'll just show you. Thank you. This diagram summarizes our arguments. It shows 4 layers. The first is structural anatomy of African art music. Second is Western misinterpretation. Third is epistemic hegemony. And last one, the fourth is African-centered restoration. The flow moves from discussion to epistemic recovery.
Key findings of the study. Coherent indigenous structure. African music exhibits distinct indigenous structures, including rhythmic architecture and melodic organization, which reflects a rich cultural heritage and intentional design. Distortion by Western paradigms. Western analytical framework often misinterprets African musical elements, labeling them as irregular or static, let me take that part again. Distortion by Western paradigms. African analytical framework often misinterprets African musical elements, labeling them as irregular or static, which undermines their inherent complexity and cultural significance. Insight from African framework. Reanalysis using African-centered framework reveal clearer insights into the music cultural coherence, highlighting the importance of context in understanding African art music.
The implications of the study extends beyond music analysis. Thank you. The implications of this study extends beyond music analysis. For music theory, African art music expands global theory beyond Western universals. For decolonial scholarship, it demonstrates how knowledge hierarchies operate in musicology. For curricular reform, we must integrate African analytical models into teaching and assessment. And for global musicology, African art music should be recognized as a site of theoretical innovations.
A study revealed that African art music possesses a coherent structural anatomy that is often misinterpreted through Western paradigms. We recommend integrating African-centered framework into music education to rectify its distortions. Future research should focus on developing curricula that embrace these indigenous logics, fostering a more inclusive understanding of global music. By doing so, we can elevate African music to its rightful place in the global musical landscape.
On a final note, African art music should no longer be seen as a Western music with African characteristics. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for the technical issues, but thank you for so
yeah, thank you very much. Give another round of applause to yourself for, yeah. So at times it's not clear whether you were talking about African music generally or African art music. That's one. Then there were too many things going on. I tried to pronounce some of the words there. My teeth were kind of you don't have to use big words. You don't have to use big words. You are making a very important point to resist hegemonic analytical frameworks and to look for African-centered ways of studying African music. That's a basic thesis. You cannot fault that. You don't have to use any big word. That's one. Two, at some point, it's difficult. So when you say, yes, people have analyzed African music in ways that buttress the politics of difference, that's fine. But I didn't see any evidence of who has analyzed, for example, the work of Akin Yuba. Now, that's African art music. I've seen some confusion about that here today, not being able to distinguish between African music and African art music. African art music is a subset. Is that me to stop? Oh,
yeah. Hi,
okay.
Can you hear me?
So, don't use big words. Then show how the music has been misanalyzed. Maybe one or two examples. And then show, so you have to make reference to specific works. African art music is not a homogeneous thing.
Can you hear me?
It ranges from works that are written for indigenous Nigerian instruments to those that are written for symphonic orchestras. So it's a wide spectrum. So we cannot make a generalized thing. So the best approach always is to pick one or two works, three, and demonstrate how they have been misanalyzed and how they should be analyzed. And as I said, there are too many things: decoloniality, creative musicology, curricular issues. So those are problems we can't solve in 1 year. So just focus. So, your presentation is fine, it's brave, I like it. Your thesis is sound, but the way you implemented it, it's far from being the way it should be. And always run away from big grammar.
I am speaking.
Just use simple sentences and simple. When you say something, ask yourself, do I really know what I'm saying? If the answer is no, don't use it. Simple words and make your point. Please, let's clap for them once again. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Sam, can you hear us?
Thank you, Prof. Can you hear me now?
We can hear you.
Okay, thank you, Prof, for that intervention. So we can take, if I have the camera on the audience, I can see hands up and then take people online. So if you can have the camera online, thank you. That makes it good. So if you have questions, can you put up your hand? While we are, if I can't see any hand up, my question will just be the issue of your theoretical position in Gramsci. So I'm trying to, in what way did you engage Gramsci in this work on African art music? And then, if I had the presenters correctly, they talked about three countries, So I'm wondering, how many composers did you take from each of the countries, and how did you engage their works like Prof talked about? Thank you. So.
Okay, thank you, sir. Can I respond? For Gramsci's cultural hegemony, theory helps to explain how Western theory becomes the default analytical system. That was the point. I pointed out.
Okay, and how many, you talked about, okay, because of time, thank you. Do you have any other question on site, online, so that we can move on with the next presentation? Any other question? Okay, if we don't have any question, I think we can proceed. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Let's welcome, let's appreciate them and welcome the next presenter. Thank you.
Hello, hello? Okay.
Hello?
Yeah, we have more question, please. Just wait, yeah.
Okay, well, I can't see hands up, so that's fine.
Okay, so still on Gramsci, Anthony Gramsci, hegemony and cultural, yeah. So, well, I think my question is just to expand on what I just asked, but in a different ways. I'm interested in ways in which Anthony Gramsci speaks to African art music, particularly in the context of hegemony. Yeah, and Anthony Gramsci is about more political theory that speaks to agency. Maybe I'm breaking it down. So I'm interested, how does it tie to African art music in that sense? Perhaps that can help us to understand better how your work can really help us to understand that connection. That's one. Then number two, do you perhaps have your conception of anatomy? Could you please provide a basic explanation so we can understand? Perhaps it could be useful to study other forms of art music also. Because I'm interested in that, anatomy is a technical word that comes from somewhere. Perhaps you've conceptualized it in a different ways, and it would be nice to see how you have done that. I'm interested in that, yeah. Thank you.
Sorry, I would like to engage our third co-presenter to just participate.
I don't know if I should say praise the Lord. Yes, the questions are quite insightful, and the observations and what you've registered, they are noted. Like, if I go into the explanation, okay, anatomy general, let me start from that. It's taken from the medical word anatomy, the structures, internal structures, everything that has to do with organization of the... Are you with me, Dr. Yorinde? For the other question you asked, these are my mentees. That's why I came up here. Actually, I'm very strong. So we work together and asked them to go and present and to bear their father's names. And that's what they have come to do. I can see the helplessness. So they probably is the first time they will do this kind of presentation. So let's accommodate them. When you see the full paper, we did excellent job in the full manuscript, which we may not explain in 10 minutes or 15 minutes. But your questions are noted, and the grammatical overlaps are somersaults. So we take them into consideration. So I would say we should just release them before. Thank you.